to today's broadcast of North Idaho College Public Forum. The crew is comprised of NIC television students, and your moderator is North Idaho College political scientist Tony Stewart.
Today's topic involves the Soviet Union and United States relations, and we're so fortunate to have two very distinguished guests to discuss this very important topic. Before introducing those guests, however, I would like to thank Lewis Clark State College for providing these guests for our program. Each year they do a very special symposium, and this year it involves Soviet-United States relations. And again, I thank that institution of higher learning in Idaho for making this program possible. Welcome to the program, as I indicated, two guests. Vyacheslav Gavrilin is with us from the Soviet Union. He is a Soviet liaison for the USSR State Committee for Physical, Cultural, and Sport. He's in the United States, headquartered in Seattle, Washington, preparing for the 1990 Goodwill Games for the USSR. Those games will take place July the 20th through August the 5th in 1990. He is also editor-in-chief of the Soviet Sport. It's a great pleasure to welcome you to our country and to have you on our program.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I'm also very happy to welcome to the program from the United States government, Mr. Wayne Neal, who is with the U.S. State Department, and he is economic officer at the Soviet desk in our country at the State Department. Mr. Neal, it's a pleasure having you on our program also.
Thank you.
I'm very happy to have three regular members of our panel to join with me today in questioning our distinguished guests. First, to my left, Idaho State Senator Mary Lou Reed. Next to her, former Kootenai County prosecutor and attorney in Idaho, Glenn Walker. And then next to him is Idaho Attorney Janelle Burke. And I shall ask Senator Reed to commence the questioning.
Thank you, Tony. Gentlemen, this is a very unusual opportunity. We don't usually get a chance to talk about Soviet-American relations, and so appreciate your being here. And let me start with just the big obvious question, and I think I'll address it to you, Mr. Neal. We've had 4 years now of Gorbachev's presidency. Would you like to talk a little bit about some of the milestones, some of the changes that actually have taken place within the Soviet Union and the impact these changes have made upon our U.S.-Soviet relationship? How's that for covering the whole globe?
Well, I think it's an excellent question. Mr. Gorbachev is truly a historic figure, and the events that have taken place under his stewardship are truly historic in their scope. I think having visited the Soviet Union both before and after, I'd say the most striking change is just the political freedom that is coming to that country. From Vladivostok to Leningrad, they've had elections that for the Soviet Union are unprecedented in their openness. They've had party secretaries defeated by fairly unknown people. And so from a political perspective, I'd say that the changes have been tremendous.
And these are changes that actually have really impacted the Russian people. And do you see them reaching forward with a certain amount of pleasure and contentment, or what is the mood of the Russian people as you see it?
Well, speaking just for myself, my conversations with ordinary Russians, I would have to say that they're using their newfound political freedoms to express their dissatisfaction to a large extent with a lot of the economic situation. Food distribution, things of this nature. It's a bit tough. People want to see improvement. They want to see it fairly quickly, and they're using their new freedoms to express themselves, hoping for an improvement in the economic situation within the Soviet Union.
Thank you. Mr. Gavrilin, will you say something perhaps about the impact of glasnost, did I say it correctly, and the changes that your president has brought about?
First, excuse me for my English.
We certainly understand.
I think Gorbachev, not only Gorbachev, party, government, made much for openness, for glassness. It is, in Moscow, it is look, in not only Moscow, in Soviet, all country, on Soviet Union. It is political change good in our country. Impossible thing made all for 3-4 years. it is necessary time, long time for perestroika, for reconstruction. И openness, и гласность, it is necessary each person, each Soviet citizen, not only made, it is seen in a style гласность and perestroika and openness. И, of course, speak right Mr. Neil, it is necessary for us, very important economic questions, economic problem. It is problem not government Gorbachev, not it is problem old leaders, not to work good, not good system of work possible. This not big time. It is six people. It is necessary speak different questions. Now, my opinion, it is perestroika. It is necessary for my country. It is these 3-4 years very important for economics reconstruction.
So the reconstruction of the economic system in
yes.
Russia.
It is necessary commercial relations with other countries, with United States. Not only, for example, I work in commercial area. State Sports Committee have joint venture with different countries, with South Korea, Japan, West Germany. It's very difficult with United States. Not know what problem. Problem probably in Soviet, in us. Probably not only in us, in other area.
Well, Mr. Gavrilin, I'd like to ask you on the subject of perestroika. You're a journalist, an intellectual, a writer of novels and other things. You obviously read the world's newspapers, and and journalists all over the world are speculating about whether perestroika is going to be successful. We see trouble spots all over the Soviet Union, all over the Eastern Bloc of nations. Great changes. Is perestroika going to survive?
Yes.
Is it going to work?
Yes.
With the tremendous changes that we are seeing, that we can't predict the results.
Not only Soviet Union, also in Hungary, in Poland,
Yes.
in other countries.
Yes.
I think it is reconstruction, perestroika in Soviet Union help reconstruction or great change in other countries.
But how about
Yes.
the breakup, the cultural differences that are coming out, and the Russians against the Latvians and Estonians, and the Azerbaijanis against the Armenians? How about these conflicts and these turmoils? Is there a great fear that that's going to shut down some of the reconstructing?
Ethnic questions, ethnic problem. English ethnic?
Ethnic, yes.
Ethnic. It is a problem, old problem, Russian states, 20 different people, 20 different, in the United States possible also 20 different representative, 20,
Yes.
not 20, 200 different people. In the United States possible also 200 different, representative 200 people. Now these people in Seattle, in Idaho, in Montana, in different states. In Soviet Union, for example, Armenian and Azerbaijan, it is two republic. Very difficult problem. It is necessary time. Possible these questions in, for example, Azerbaijan and Armenia in 1 month.
The question I would have of you is these cultural differences, these ethnic differences that we and the rest of the world are now seeing because of glasnost, were these ethnic differences always there? I mean, obviously they were, but was there dispute and turmoil before glasnost?
Not. It is all process. It is before. Only during for example, government 60 years, it is not this process not possible not written about this process. Yes, not big, not also.
It was there, but it just wasn't written about?
Glasnost only help resolution this problem. It is openness, speak, discuss this problem. It is necessary best resolution for each ethnic conflict. Impossible.
Resolve their own problems, is that what you're saying? Each area should resolve their own problems?
No, it is difficult for me from language speak.
Yes.
I understand I won't speak. Very difficult in English. Yes, it is necessary. I only repeat. It is necessary time for resolution. It is necessary each problem, ethnic problem, national problem. It is necessary. Impossible all nationalist problem one resolution. Impossible.
I would ask Mr. Neal very briefly, so we go on to Janelle, if you would comment on these perestroika and the problems, the ethnic problems that are coming up because of it, the restructuring.
Well, I don't know that the ethnic problems really are coming about because of perestroika. Glasnost certainly has encouraged people to begin to speak of problems that they have. Some are economic problems, others are long-held national problems. The history of the Soviet Union is incredibly, and of Russia, and of the lands that are now controlled by the Soviets, is incredibly complex. But it is true that now people can voice their problems, but the structures and the system have not yet been changed in such a way that they can resolve them. People in the Baltic republics have taken a very peaceful approach. They're exerting their autonomy in ways that are acceptable to the Soviet Union, to the Soviet leadership under Gorbachev, and in some ways that frankly make the people in Moscow a little uneasy. And so they're sort of feeling their way through this new system. Now, clearly, the problems between the Azerbaijanis and the Georgians and the Armenians, the people in the Transcaucasus, these involve violence, in some cases, things that are more difficult to control and to channel. And again, you have an old structure which is being changed slowly. So to come up with an easy solution, again, I'd have to turn to Mr. Gavrilins and just say that these are internal problems, of course, for the Soviet peoples to decide among themselves. We, in the United States government, want to see perestroika succeed, because we believe that which is market-oriented reform. We believe that this would promote stability within the Soviet Union, which is certainly good for the Soviets. It's certainly good for us, good for the rest of the world as well. So we wish them well, but ultimately this is a matter for the Soviet peoples themselves.
Janelle Berg.
It's fascinating to learn more about Russia, but at the same time I would like to ask you more about our government and what is our relationship and what is your function as a part of our government in dealing with economics. So can you tell us just a little bit more about your job in specifics?
Okay, from the micro perspective, I work chiefly in the areas of maritime, fisheries, agriculture. These are areas that I think have special interest for this part of the country. I also handle the Alaskan Siberian. A lot of people are surprised to learn that there's just an enormous amount of U.S.-Soviet contact in the Bering Straits region. It's trade, it's culture, all of these sorts of things. So I work very closely in a very cooperative sense with my Soviet counterparts. Also working, and this is perhaps the more difficult part of my job, working with the Hill, which is the Congress, and working with other parts of the United States government with various interests trying to coordinate. And then once we coordinate our positions, in some cases we can't. It's not just the Soviet Union where they have disputes. And then we attempt to work in a way that is mutually advantageous for both sides. Fisheries, for example. Selling grain to the Soviets, continuing to assure that market for our farmers, very important market.
What new markets are opening up? Are there new markets, or is it just an expansion of the markets that have already been there?
Well, to be frank, there are difficulties in approaching the Soviet market. A lot of them, for example, the convertibility of the ruble. It's a non-convertible currency outside of the Soviet Union to a large extent. It's non-convertible within the Soviet Union, because the way that the structure persists, the ruble does not command resources, planners command resources. So that's a difficulty for an American businessman who's approaching the market. Quality of goods can be difficult. There have been changes in the trading relationships, but for many Soviets, conducting business is anew. They've only begun conducting business in the Western sense for the average factory manager or producer who wants to export for the last 4 years. So there are a lot of these some psychological, but others structural, problems that mean that last year trade was only, for our side, $2.8 billion, most of that grain, and for the Soviets, about $0.7 billion. This representing about 1% of U.S. trade, 2% Soviet trade from the bilateral perspective.
And so certainly there is much, much future in what you're doing. Lots of opportunity, perhaps, to work through some of these problems, I would think.
Well, in my personal experience, I've seen us overcome a lot of problems on the fisheries side, for example. The Marine Resources in Bellingham, Washington, has had a very excellent relationship with the Soviets in fisheries for a long time. But it was one-sided to the extent that Soviets were fishing in our waters. Now, American fishermen in joint venture situations are fishing in Soviet waters, off of Kamchatka, off of Siberia, pulling in crabs and salmon and these sorts of things, in a situation that's advantageous for both sides. Clearly here are businessmen on both sides who have overcome these problems and have engaged in mutually beneficial trade. And it's been a pleasure to have played a minor role in facilitating this. But I think that that's the government's perspective, that where there is mutually beneficial trade, we want to support it. We want to encourage it.
Well, it's been very interesting to talk about some of the things that the Americans are doing, but I know that you are in the United States specifically for some games that are going to be coming up. Would you tell our viewers about it so that they can be making their plans if they want to, in 1990, attend those games and see some Soviet citizens who are participating in some kind of sport?
You speak about charter flight?
Yes.
Yes, it is a charter flight with Soviet delegation, approximately 700 persons, Soviet delegation in total program, and tourists also. First step, speak about exchange. It is I not speak good English. No, I understand exchange. It is 100 from Soviet Union to United States, 100 from United States to Soviet Union. Yes, it is exchange.
Yes.
It is word exchange. Not we for this exchange. We, for example, Soviet citizen 1,000 in Seattle, tourist, plus journalist, best journalist, Soviet journalist, best sportsman and goodwill games for participation. We expect 1,000 American citizens in Soviet Union. It is possible organization. For example, in basement Rotary Club. For example, tourists for Idaho, states Idaho, pay for air ticket, not pay in Soviet Union for eat, for hotel, in possible in home. Also Soviet citizen, Soviet tourist. Charter flight, Aeroflot, I don't know what possible from Montreal to Seattle, possible for East, no, for sportsmen, best from Montreal, best. It is depend of acclimatization sportsmen. It is last time in Moscow, from Moscow to Seattle. Difficult acclimatization in Far East. It is.
Mr. Neal, I have a question for you. And as a member of the State Department, I've had the privilege of visiting the Soviet Union twice, before Glasnost and Perestroika, and then once while it was underway. And I suppose you would agree with me that 4 years ago, if you would have been on this program and this official State Department indicated that we would be in this situation today, you'd probably been removed from your position. That is, it's moved in such a surprising way. It's very exciting. And so my direct question is that kind of excitement throughout the State Department today, what's going on in the Soviet Union, the impact that's having in Eastern Europe, as we've indicated and identified in Poland, Hungary. It was astounding to me to be able to observe that a government itself, in its own parliamentary process, decided to change the status of their party in Hungary. So I've had a long introduction to my question, but are events moving so fast that it's very difficult in the State Department, although it's very exciting, to address some of those issues, and how can we best be cooperative in the changes that are taking place?
Well, having lived in both and served in both Poland and Hungary, I can attest to the changes there have been incredible, and the Soviet Union as well. And as I've said earlier, the administration clearly supports Perestroika. But objectively speaking, we're limited in what we can do. There is no Marshall Plan for the Soviet Union, for example. I think it's neither wanted by the Soviets nor is it possible, here in the United States. But there are things that we can do. We can provide a stable international climate for Gorbachev and for Perestroika to succeed. How do we do that? Well, resolution of regional conflicts. We continue to engage the Soviets seriously and conclude important arms control agreements.
I was going to say, doesn't it affect the arms control?
Sure, chemical weapons agreement that was
even
reached.
Defense expenditures.
Certainly, on both sides. I think that as mutual confidence is built, we can find expenditure on defense-related items falling. We can see defense conversion, perhaps in both countries. Of course, we can continue, of course, to make our human rights concerns known to the Soviet Union as problems like Armenia, Azerbaijan continue to develop, and these become even more important issues and more important for the leadership. We can provide modest technical assistance to the Soviets, for example, in developing a statistical base that's consistent with international economic organizations. And of course, on the commercial side, we can try to get into mutually advantageous agreements that help both of us. And then a final thing we can do is challenge the Soviets to engage in the sort of economic reform that they need, particularly on the monetary side, to come up with a ruble or a convertible currency to improve the market within the Soviet Union. These sorts of things that provide the people there with not just political but economic freedoms.
Mr. Korvilan, I would like to give you the same opportunity. Since the United States is cooperating in many ways, and I know that you are aware that we're very excited about what is happening in negotiations. Has this in any way changed the Soviet Union's policies and how they relate to the United States as we react to such issues as Glasnost?
Essentially, would like an understanding of Soviet interpretation of U.S.-Soviet relationship regarding Glasnost.
Difficult. Not questions, not understand good English. Okay.
You're doing fine.
Okay. Yes. You speak fine. I not understand. States Department help me. It is. I know it is relations between United States and Soviet Union. Perestroika in our country help these relations. Mr. Neal speak about steps, chemical weapon, meeting international. It is necessary step by step. Impossible from step number 2, step number 10. It is necessary step by step. It is necessary basement. This, of course, perestroika, it is big acceleration for Soviet-American relations. Goodwill Games also, it is little direction, it is sport. Now it is necessary to understand in Soviet Union, sport also in United States and Canada, very big, very great importation, very good influence in people. Sport, it is not only health of people, sport, it is education. It is free time, it is leisure, people. We work in sport also. It is Goodwill Games. It is good relations with two Olympic committees, United States and Soviet Union. Very good relations, very good, friendly. Second, it is charter flight. It is art program. These relations big. It is more development relations. I not look at these relations. It's necessary in future work.
Thank you. Mary Lou Reed.
I work good to your questions or not?
That's very good.
Yes.
Very.
Oh, such a big topic in so little time. We really have just a couple of minutes. And I think that we have all been so reassured by Gorbachev's statements on Soviet foreign policy. I think the one that gives us the most hope, of course, is his statement, which many of us believe in, that there are no victors in a nuclear war. Are we actually seeing a reduction of military spending in Russia at this time? I know that this has been a great burden upon the Soviet economy, as it is upon all of ours. Do you want to respond to that? Are the Russians cutting back in their military spending in accord with the statements that Gorbachev has made about a desire for peace?
Well, I guess the short answer is that yes, there are indications that by Gorbachev, for example, and having handed figures, that defense expenditures as a percentage of budget and percentage of GDP are falling.
I have to interrupt there. We're out of time. I wish we had more time. We just got started. It's been a great honor to have you both on our program, and again, we thank Lewis Clark State College for making this possible. We welcome you to the country again, and we hope your stay is a wonderful one. Ladies and gentlemen, we hope you've enjoyed our program. I would invite you to be with us again next week at this same time. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
North Idaho College Public Forum can be seen at the same time each week over this station. This production was videotaped earlier by an NIC student crew for viewing at this more appropriate time.